I'm Ryan,
I'm Oscar.
and this is the Sound Project. All right, so today we're interviewing Oscar. So I'm really excited for this episode because of everyone on the HD team. I've known you the longest. So we were friends like back in high school and then like reconnected after college and everything. And now we're both here.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I'm really excited for this. So yeah, we'll just kind of start from like, where are you from, what got you into music, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, I was born in Tampa, Florida. I was the first person in my family born in the U.S. The rest of my family was all born in Colombia. And then I was born there and immediately moved to Colombia again. And we lived there a couple years. And then we moved here when I was about 3 years old to Indianapolis from Colombia. And then been in Indianapolis ever since.
Yeah.
And then just recently last year, I moved to New York to head up Haversick Designs East. So just kind of increasing our presence out on the East Coast. And that's been a cool adventure. I'm an Indiana boy. I love Indiana. And so I'm out there repping the Hoosiers.
Heck yeah.
Although the Boilermaker variety. I'm a Purdue fan.
All right, never mind.
But out there repping Indiana on the East Coast. So that's been a lot of fun.
Cool. So I guess let's just start with, where did your music journey start?
Yeah, my family is my family loves music. Colombia as a culture loves music a lot, and we dance a lot. But my parents are both engineers, and my sister's an engineer, and wasn't really instilled in us from a young age. I wasn't taking music lessons, learning instruments, or anything like that.
Sure.
But in high school, both my siblings did theater, where they both loved acting, and we were always writing plays and trying to write movies and doing things like that when we were kids. And so I started doing theater in high school as well.
Cool.
And then kind of through that world and everything, I also joined choir. And so got a little bit plugged into the theater and choir scene in high school.
Yeah.
But I was mainly a soccer player, where I was an athlete and I really loved soccer. Soccer was my main thing.
Yep.
And then during my junior year, I got injured in soccer. And then as a result of that, I ended up getting a lot more involved in choir and theater, and I really fell in love with it during my junior year. And so then I, took on a few more choirs, I ended up doing an IB music class, which I really fell in love with.
Yep.
And then I really, fell in love with theater even more. And so then, I just kind of got really into it during that time.
So I guess I didn't realize. So you really weren't into music until, outside of listening to music, you really weren't into it until high school then.
Yeah, no, I just kind of my brother was always obsessed with hip hop when we were kids. That was actually how he learned English. Was when they immigrated to the U.S. was he learned English by handwriting 50 Cent's "Get Rich or Die Trying" album, just copying the lyrics. Just into his notebooks and stuff. And so he fell in love with hip hop that way. I learned English just as a baby. Right. But he fell in love with hip hop and was showing me all these albums and stuff, which we probably shouldn't have been listening to when we were kids. If you think about it, he was 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Coming down, Get Rich or Die Trying. But so we were always obsessed with hip hop. So I would write, raps and poetry and stuff like that.
Cool.
And I would rap a little bit in high school and whatnot, but I wasn't really, it was kind of I don't know. It felt always very separate from, my choir and theater world and everything like that.
Yeah.
But then at some point I started writing songs as well of actually singing or, playing a little bit of ukulele or keys or guitar and things like that. And so then I started singer-songwriter, some singer-songwriter stuff and doing some, writing raps and things like that as well.
Yeah.
But never really was super into actually making music until later in high school.
Nice. So I know that both you and your brother Diego are involved in recording and things like that. So when did was recording just kind of the natural progression from the singer-songwriter, or when did you get involved with that?
Probably the other way around. My brother, he's a much more, I'd say, serious, recording artist, where he, in high school, that was kind of all he did. He was obsessed with writing and making music and producing and engineering and, things like that. And so where he was he'd put out a couple, small mixtapes and things like that throughout high school, and he was kind of known as the rapping guy. Yeah. Whereas I would write a little bit and make songs here and there, but it was a lot more of just kind of a passive hobby. Cool. And, you know, where he's still putting out, you know, albums and producing for people around town and things like that. I definitely, it's a lot more of, I enjoy writing and things. And, you know, I don't actually create songs as much or finish songs and get them mastered and everything as much. Sure. But sorry, what was the question again?
Just so like, what got you into the recording side?
Oh yeah, it was mainly just watching my brother, of just like seeing him record, and you know he gave me a microphone when I was 14 or something like that, and then I would mess around with it, record, write songs,
That's
record
awesome.
it as well.
Have you and Diego done stuff together?
We did early in high school.
Okay.
When I was in high school, and I remember we did a remix of Mr. Nice Watch by J. Cole. And it was really, really fun. But we've never done anything since then. Okay. We've talked about it. I've helped him. I've recorded like some small ukulele or guitar parts, or helped a tiny amount on like harmonies or something like that on some of his songs. But we've never actually made a song together, which would be fun.
Okay, fair enough. So then after high school, you went to Purdue for college. And what did you end up majoring in there?
So your first year at Purdue, all the engineering students just are in first year engineering. So the idea is that you don't declare your actual major until your sophomore year after you've been exposed a little bit to it.
Okay.
And my plan was always to do mechanical engineering, just because it's kind of a good, in my perspective, it was a good umbrella engineering. I could kind of go in a lot of different directions with it, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do after school yet.
Yeah.
But that idea didn't give me a ton of fulfillment, or I just wasn't feeling very excited about my career. Sure. And I was really frustrated about being in college and not feeling inspired and passionate about what I was going to be doing. And so I kind of did a lot of soul searching. I remember during that winter break of freshman year.
Okay.
And I kind of just kept thinking back to my music experience in high school and how much theater and choir in particular meant to me. And I was writing a lot more at that time just because I had more free time in college. Right. And I was kind of just on my own. I was writing a little bit more. But I was missing theater and choir a lot, where I wouldn't say it surprised me, but I was just missing it a ton. And I was realizing how kind of big a part of me it was. Sure. And so I did a lot of kind of brainstorming of how could I be involved in the performance arts or in fine arts or in music still. And so the first thing I thought actually was designing recording studios, was doing some kind of architectural or structural design for recording studios or something like that. And so I remember I Googled recording studio design / architect. Okay. And then I think I tagged Purdue on it as well to figure out what I could do at Purdue. And then the acoustical engineering program came up for it, which is part of their multidisciplinary engineering major, but then you can get a concentration in acoustical engineering. Okay. And so that really appealed to me, where the multidisciplinary engineering is a bit of a build your own major almost, where it's the way that they describe it is always you have a passion about something that you want to pair with engineering. And so for a lot of the acoustical engineering students, they have a passion for music that they want to pair with engineering. Sure. And then there are other, a lot of other concentrations are, visual design engineering, where somebody wants to pair art with engineering, or there's theater engineering, where somebody loves theater and they want to pair it with engineering. But yeah, so mine was acoustics, and I was, the second that my Google search found something pretty specific and dedicated to what I was kind of exactly what I was looking for, I was like, that's what I want to do. Sweet.
So you pretty much knew then, from winter break of freshman year, that was the direction that you were going to take.
Yeah. I had to talk with my parents about it, and they were a bit, not skeptical, but a bit of what is this? Right. Acoustical engineer. We've never heard, are you going to be able to get a job in that? Right. And so I definitely had to do some research and try and, I wanted to make sure I was going to be, okay, and that I'd be able to find a job. Yeah. But I met with the program director throughout that semester, and just everything that I kept learning about the program just made me more and more sure that it was the place for me. Sure. I was cool being surrounded by a ton of other, like-minded, passionate people who'd been struggling, kind of thing of oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to major in? What am I going to be? What are my career goals? And then we would kind of find this home at multidisciplinary engineering, where we were all really passionate and excited about our futures, which is cool.
That's awesome. So then moving from college, then you're the longest employee of Haverstick Designs other than Gavin. So then how'd you get tied into Haverstick Designs. How'd you meet Gavin?
Yeah, it was all really, really serendipitous. Like, kind of like I said, like where my first thought with acoustical engineering was recording studio design.
Right.
And then I Googled that and something popped up for Purdue Engineering, and it was like exactly what I needed.
Okay.
And then it was kind of like along the same boat of I was, the summer after my freshman year, I hadn't actually declared for acoustical engineering. You start that your sophomore year.
Okay.
But during that summer, I interned at a radio station, WTTS 92.3 in Indianapolis, and it as a promotions intern at the radio station. And so they knew that I had an interest in acoustical engineering and audio, and so they had me work with their sound guy a lot.
Sure.
Or with like the sound guys, the sound engineers. And during one of the live studio sessions, the live sound engineer for the studio session, Chris, he and I were talking about how I want to do recording studio design. He was like, "Oh, you should actually talk with like my guy, like my studio designer. I'm building a studio right now." And I was like, "No way, that's so cool."
Nice.
And so I didn't know it at the time, but I was talking with the owner of 416 Wabash, one of our recording studios that we've designed.
Yeah.
And so he was showing me his architectural plans, which were actually Gavin's plans. And I didn't even know that it was, I didn't know what I was looking at. I just knew that they were architectural plans and they looked awesome and I was hyped about it.
Okay.
And so that conversation happened, and I totally forgot about Gavin afterwards. Like the summer happened, the summer went by. I didn't reach out to him for whatever reason. But then during another Google search, when I learned the term acoustical consultant at some point along the road.
Sure.
I found the National Council of Acoustical Consultants, their website, and it seemed like a cool directory of just as many acoustical consultants as I could find.
Yeah.
And Haverstick Designs was the only one in Indiana on the directory.
Sure.
And the office at the time was 10 minutes away from my parents' house.
Okay.
And so I remember being like, this is perfect. And then I went on his website and he was a recording studio designer. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. Like, that's exactly what my vision was from the very beginning.
Cool.
And so I remember I just sent him a message. I think I sent him like my resume and like a cover letter kind of introducing myself. He was nice enough to meet me for lunch and it ended up going well. And it was, like I said about like it being serendipitous. I remember him saying that when I emailed him, it was like, a couple weeks after he had made the decision of, I want to get some help around the office. Like, I'm like, it's too much for me to deal with by myself. And he was like toying with the idea of making a new hire or getting an intern or, how that was going to work.
Yeah.
And so then, we kind of hit it off. And so then it ended up working out for us to, for me to help him out over the summers as an internship program.
And you were an intern for like several years. How many years did you do the internship?
2 years.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
yeah, so it was after my sophomore year and then after my junior year. And then I would do like winters, like I would come in during the winter and help out. I think I helped move one winter,
Okay.
like move between offices. And then I also helped with just do some stuff part-time during the school year.
Sure. Okay. So then did you go after the internship, did you go directly into full-time then with Gavin?
Yeah. I graduated in May 2019 and then started in June.
Cool.
So it was all really, really seamless. Like, like I said, we got along really well. And from the get-go, I was telling Gavin, I was like, I would love to work here, whatever your plans are.
Yeah.
Like, this is kind of what my dream profession was. This was like what I've wanted to do since the beginning, since I discovered this career path.
Right.
And it ended up working out really, really well where as I was graduating, he was, Haverstick Designs was continuing to grow and it was kind of a good time for me to come on.
For sure. And you've been like a huge part like of being here. I mean, between being a secondary like acoustical consultant, so I know that's alleviated a lot like from Gavin being able to go out, but then also you're the one that started doing our 3D renderings. So do you want to talk about like kind of how you came up with the idea that we should start incorporating that into the process and then just like what that process looks like shortly?
Yeah. We I know it was when I was an intern, we were doing a studio for Tori Kelly, and I think this was my first year internship. There's a chance that it was my second summer.
Sure.
But we were doing the studio for Tori Kelly, and it was kind of a sunroom that she had in her home. Okay. And we were converting to a studio, and she was there were a few kind of different treatment ideas of, treatment concept ideas that we were having. And it was tough for her to visualize them and kind of make a decision. And she was like, is there any chance that I could see what this would look like beyond just kind of like a 2D CAD drawing?
Sure.
And Gavin kind of was like, we'll see what we can do. And so he pretty much was talking with me and was like, I know that there are some 3D modeling softwares out there. You know, I don't exactly have the time to sit down and figure it out, but would you want to make that your project for the week? And so then I downloaded SketchUp Make, the free version of SketchUp at the time, and kind of just started messing around with 3D modeling. And it felt really crazy to be doing for my like learning project to be Tori Kelly's recording studio, where I was like, man, this has to look pretty cool. And I remember like, you know, and I was managed to make it in SketchUp and like, you know, put in the treatments, and then I found a plugin. I forget what plugin it was, but like a free plugin that like a rendering software where it would take like, you know, 12 hours or something like that to make one image, to render one image. And so, and I would have to like, you know, set the sun settings and everything, and then leave it for 12 hours and come back and hope that it looked good.
Oh my
gosh. There
gosh.
would be times when I would realize like, oh, I forgot to turn the light setting on, and it was, I just rendered darkness for 12 hours. but yeah, so, and it was on that one, and it was, like I said, it was nerve wracking trying to, you know, do this thing that was for like, you know, artists that I listened to. You know, I love Tori Kelly. She's such a cool artist. Yeah. So I was like, man, I don't want to mess this up for her.
That's fair.
But it ended up being cool, and I ended up being really excited about the renderings. And then it's always funny, like, you know, looking back, I'm like, those renderings were not great. Especially much cooler now
compared to what they are now. I mean, they're pretty insane now, like what those renderings have changed into. But that's awesome. So then outside of work, like, so you live in New York now. So what do you do like for fun outside of work?
I do lots. I love working on music.
Yeah.
I'm part of a little musical duo called Echoes with my buddy Zach Beyer.
Cool.
It's kind of like a hip hop, I'd say kind of like alternative R&B vibe. So we put out an EP in 2021, I think.
Okay.
And then we're working on another one this year.
Awesome.
That's been cool. Then I do a little bit of theater as well. I just kind of finished up my first. I've always wanted to do theater again since finishing college, and so I went back and did community theater in Albany.
Cool.
And so I just finished up a Christmas show, which was really, really fun. Shout out to Highlight Acting Troupe in Albany.
Heck yeah.
But so that's really fun. I hang out with my dog a lot. I got a 90-pound pit bull mix. She's mixed with something bigger than a pit bull. But I hang out with her, take her on hikes and stuff like that.
Cool.
Rock climb a lot as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the big one. That like I feel like especially when you're here, like you're always climbing. Like,
yeah. My girlfriend's the more intense climber. Where she's a lot. She's the one who got me into it. But and it's cool being in New York, you know, with the Adirondacks nearby, and there are lots of different mountains around, and so we're climbing most weekends and things like that, as long as I'm not traveling for work.
Right. All right, cool. So then going back to the fact that you are like the longest employee outside of Gavin, like what's it been like seeing the change? Like, cause we've grown a lot. So what's like the fact that you've been along for the whole ride pretty much, like what's that been like?
It's been such a cool experience of, being the first employee and seeing how it went from just Gavin operating by himself pretty much to now we have a team of 8 soon. I think it's 7 right now. It's about to be 8.
Yeah.
And then interns in the summer. You know, now if we have 2 interns and we have an 8th employee coming, we're gonna be 10 people. That's crazy. That's enough for a 5-on-5 basketball game.
Yeah.
That's bizarre. But it's been super exciting seeing it go from because when it started, it was a very much like Gavin was my mentor.
Right.
I was learning his style of doing things and then helping take stuff off his load and kind of obviously adding my style into it. Mm-hmm. But it was a very, you know, I was learning his way of doing things.
Sure.
And then kind of helping him out as much as I could with it. Yeah. And obviously, you know, Gavin's still leading the ship, but now it's such a team dynamic, which is so cool of even just being here, you know, where I work remotely from New York.
Right.
And so, you know, since our last 2 employees, Cam and Juan started, I haven't really been in the office with them a ton.
Right.
And so I was even just like in our conference room, I was looking at our whiteboard, and it's full of ideas of Cam's ideas and your ideas, I imagine, of how, you know, marketing and promotion scheduling and kind of like what the goals are for next year. Yeah. And I was like, wow, that is so far removed from stuff that I'm involved in and stuff that I'm sure Gavin's involved in, but not, you know, making all of those particular plans or like, not spearheading those. Yeah. And so I think it's so cool that there's just so many parts of the business that are kind of like their own entities, like this promotion and advertising side of like, you know, producing all this, the podcast and everything. It's so cool that you guys are doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, I'm still like really proud of like the role that I play and everything, but it's awesome being a part of something bigger than you and bigger than like, you know, I'm not involved in everything. I can't, you know, I'm not helping, you know, assist with everything. I'm very removed from the podcast world. But yeah, so I love seeing the team mentality of seeing like, you know, the greater than the sum of our parts type of thing of like, you know, we all kind of like come together like Voltron and kind of make this bigger thing that Haverstick Designs is, you know, where it's not just the name for Gavin Haverstick as a designer. Now it's the name for all of us as a team.
Yeah.
Which is so cool.
And that's something like, obviously I haven't been here as long as you have, but it's been really cool just how like the team here like really is a family. Like we're all so close with each other. So that's awesome. What's one of like your biggest goals for Haverstick Designs? Like whether it be in the next like 5 years, but like what's your hope that you see something like moving forward?
Yeah. I think I'd like to see, I don't know. One, it's kind of like not huge picture. I think it'd be awesome to do a project in Latin America. Yeah. I think that would be really fun, especially with, you know, like our new hire, Juan, he's Mexican, I believe. Yeah. And so we, you know, it just be, we both speak Spanish. We both are really proud of our heritage and our culture. So it'd just be so cool to do a project in Latin America. And, awesome. It feels like it's coming, you know, like they're like, we're planting those seeds and having those conversations with, you know, partners out there and stuff. Yep. And so I'm excited for that to happen.
That's actually something else that we haven't talked about, but I want to add is just the fact that like we've had some people reach out to us wanting to do a project that when they find out that we have 2 Spanish speaking staff that they're like, oh, that's like amazing. Yeah. So that's really cool. And the other thing too is like, the fact that you like really kind of carry your culture with you. So because we've done like a couple of pitch and breakfasts and things, and like you've brought in like arepas or like during the World Cup, like you're all about like when are certain teams playing, like when's Colombia playing, like, and so it's just like really cool how you carry that with you.
Oh, thanks. No, yeah, it means a lot to me, and especially with like not having been born in the U.S. or not having been born in Colombia. Yeah. It's an interesting. Yeah, my cultural identity feels very special to me. Yeah. But just because like. It's something that I carry with me, even though I wasn't born there. But my family's like always been very firm about instilling in me like you're Colombian. Like Colombian is a huge part of your identity, and I always carry it with me.
That's cool. So when I did Gavin's episode, my wife Alexi had a bunch of like rapid fire questions, and I can't remember what all of them are. So I'm gonna try to remember what some of them were. But I know one was Coke or Pepsi.
Ooh, Coke. I'm team Gavin on that one.
Heck yeah. I think most of us here are, but we'll see. Favorite Mario Kart character?
Ooh, oh my gosh. What are their names? Koopa Troopa.
Okay. Yeah. That's a different one. You don't hear many people have that one.
I like the turtles.
I think one of them was like, so if you're on a long drive, like, are you a music person or are you a podcast person?
Ooh, both. I've been an audiobook person lately.
Okay.
But definitely music usually. I'm usually jamming out to tons of songs.
Heck yeah. And then the one that Gavin couldn't answer was like, what's a guilty pleasure of yours between like movies or TV shows?
Ooh, oh, this is a good one. YouTube boxing, the influencer boxing.
Okay.
I'm big into combat sports in general, of like football, of like UFC and boxing and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the influencer boxing stuff is fascinating.
That's
like,
awesome.
I get fascinated watching like amateur boxers, learning, and then like how it's like I feel like I've learned a ton of like how like the moment of fighting in front of 20,000 people affects somebody. Like, you know, this past weekend, Jake Paul beat a real a professional boxer who froze under the lights. And it was like, oh, it turns out that being in front of that many people affects somebody, even if they're good at the sport. You know, like I'm pretty good at soccer. If I was playing in front of 10,000 people, I might freeze up. Yeah. So I think that whole thing's fascinating. And it's wild. That's like, cool. I don't, you know, not to start some controversy, but I don't think Jake Paul is going to be a world champion boxer. But it's fascinating to see how far he can go. I love watching all that. I think it's really interesting.
That's awesome. And I didn't even know that was a thing. So that's a really great one.
Yeah, YouTubers and celebrities are fighting each other, like professionally apparently, or boxing each other. So feel free to check that out.
Yeah. Dang. Well, that pretty much wraps it up. This was, like I said, I was really looking forward to doing this one today just because like I've been friends with you for a long time. So being able to do an interview with you, I was really looking forward to it. So the fact that we talked a lot about Oscar's culture and the fact that he really carries that with him every day, we'd love to hear like where are you guys listening from and where are you originally from? So that wraps up this episode of the S.O.U.N.D Project. Thank you for being a part of the S.O.U.N.D Project and tune in next week.